Welcome to Across the Aisle. My name is Gail Garbrandt, and with me today is my friend John Elsesser.
Hi, Gail.
Hi, John. For those of you just joining us, the show is on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock p.m. and again on Fridays at 4:30 p.m. If those times are not convenient for you and don't work with your schedules, don't worry, because you'll be able to find us on YouTube by searching under Across the Aisle, or you can go to WJERTV2.com and you can watch the show. So thanks again for joining us. When we were here last time, we talked about why I wanted to do the show, and basically it was because I had looked at some statistics with voter turnout, and I was quite shocked at how low the numbers were in our county. And I came across a quote from Helen Keller that I really wanted to share with you this evening. She said, "True happiness is not attained through self-gratification, but through fidelity to a worthy purpose." And so I'm hoping that as you join us week by week to see the show, that you'll agree that this is a worthy purpose. It's going to give you some valuable information and tools that will make you a more informed voter. And for those of you who have never registered, I'm hoping that this will get you excited about that process. Well, let me go ahead and turn our attention over to John, and I've asked him to tell you a little bit about his background. So welcome to Across the Aisle, John.
Thanks, Gail. Thanks. Well, Gail and I are good friends. We're very involved in a very worthy purpose, which is historic Zoar Village, and we know each other well from there, and I, in fact, live just outside of Zoar. Probably some people would say that I would be a stereotypical Republican. I'm a retired executive of a large international manufacturing company, and I now run a small business, so maybe that qualifies me as a Republican. Although I will say that I think I'm a pretty moderate one. I'm relatively involved politically. I've run for office twice up in Stark County when I lived there. I've always been involved in candidates' campaigns, and I've supported mostly Republicans, a few Democrats. But I will say too, if I look back at my own family history, my family were all Democrats until basically the 1930s. And my dad's family were from Germany, and they became Republicans during the Roosevelt era and New Deal because they had left Germany to kind of escape large government. And my mother's family were farmers and small business people, and I guess just felt more comfortable with the Republican Party as it was evolving in the 30s and the Democrat Party was evolving. So, again, I think Gail and I probably won't ever come to blows in this discussion, but hopefully we'll have a good discussion.
Great. And I will say that, at the end of the day, John and I have respect for one another, and I almost always call him on election night and say, at the end of the day, one of us is going to hold more cards than the other, but I respect the fact that you're involved in the process. And so I think that speaks well of our relationship.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So stay tuned. We're going to come back and we're going to start out by talking about what the political parties stand for. I know a lot of you say, I don't vote for the party, I vote for the person. Well, we're going to tell you why political parties are important. So stay tuned.
WJER and TV2 would like to introduce you to a new website, WJERTV2.com, where you can watch exciting high school football, soccer, and volleyball replays from TV2 Sports on your home computer, smartphone, or tablet. Also watch the latest episodes of TV2's original programming, Sports Talk, The Garden Girl, The Not So Shy Chef, Off the Record, and Medical Minutes, as well as catch up on local community news and search for local businesses. So make sure to check out the new WJERTV2.com community website where everything's local.
Hi, I'm Elaine Miller with Naturally Green Cleaning Service. My company serves both commercial and residential clients. We do general cleaning, spring and fall, empty homes to get them move-in ready, and final cleans for new construction. We use eco-friendly cleaning products that leave your home or office fresh, clean, and safe for you, your family, pets, or coworkers. Our focus at Naturally Green is to provide excellent customer service paired with outstanding work to build a relationship of trust with you, our clients. Having served the area 4+ years, we have had many referrals and testimonials that you can access on our website at www.naturallygreencs.com. Our work sells itself, therefore we have never had any contracts even with our largest commercial accounts. Call us today for your free quote and see what makes our company stand out.
Welcome back to Across the Aisle. I'm Gail Garbrandt, and with me today is my guest, John Elsesser. And John and I are going to engage in a discussion of political parties. And since we have a two-party system in the United States, we're going to be talking about Democrats and Republicans. I know that there are independents out there, but the founders actually based our political system on two parties, so it's very difficult and expensive for third parties and independents to get on the ballot and actually to be successful if they are elected.
You know, maybe I can say too at that point, you know, I had the opportunity to work outside the United States for about 10 years of my life, 5 years in Brazil and 5 years in Europe. And, you know, and again, I think the United States is a great country. You know, I think it is probably the greatest in the world. And one of the reasons is because we do have a pretty good political system. And I, you know, have seen, you know, multi-party systems with, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 parties, and they need coalitions and they need re-elections or, you know, rerunning to get final candidates. And I really think, you know, that we have a better system.
I agree with John. Also having traveled and going to Africa where they have probably 27 political parties, it becomes very difficult to gain a majority, and that's exactly what happened in Italy during the last elections. They actually don't really have a prime minister at this particular time because no party had the majority in the last election.
But I think as we talk, I'm sorry, but,
yeah.
You know, as we talk, I think we'll see that the parties do evolve, and, you know, the parties that were in place when our country started, I guess you might say one of them is still here, but really, you know, we've had parties come and go. We've had, you know, third and fourth candidates parties. In fact, I just read that in the election of 1912, there was actually 4 candidates: a Republican, a progressive Republican, that was Teddy Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, the Democrat, and I think Eugene Debs, who was a socialist. So that, I think, was the most candidates that ever ran in a presidential election.
And we're not even going to talk about 2016 yet because it's way too early, and we know we have a large field.
Well, I haven't announced my candidacy yet, but maybe the 19th.
Okay, so this could be it, folks. Tonight, John Elsesser could be the 17th candidate Republican to run for president. Oh, the 19th?
I think,
okay. Yeah. Well, I actually wanted to start with a little quote from Thomas Jefferson. This was from 1824, but I think that you might find some familiar things in this quote, so listen. Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1824, "Men by their constitutions are naturally divided into 2 parties. 1, those who fear and distrust the people and wish to draw all powers from them into the hands of the higher classes. And 2, those who identify themselves with the people, have confidence in them, cherish and consider them as the most honest and safe, although not the most wise depository of the public interests. In every country, these 2 parties exist, and in every one where they are free to think, speak, and write, they will declare themselves." So I hope that you enjoyed that. And John, any comments?
Well, you know, it's interesting because as I look at that, you know, those who fear and distrust the people and wish to draw all powers from them into the hands of the higher classes, of course, you know, we could define those 2 classes 2 different ways, right? Those could be economic classes,
right,
which some people might accuse the Republicans of being, but I could also argue those are the elected classes, the government bureaucrat classes that are more typical of the, you know, the Democrat Party. So I think, you know, we could probably agree on that and yet still disagree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind is when that particular quote was said, America was an agrarian society. So a lot of the people were not very educated, and so there was this fear of handing over too much power to the people, and that's why in the Constitution, as it was originally written, the president is still indirectly elected, but members of the legislature were elected differently too.
Right,
So-
we're a representative democracy, not a pure democracy. And yeah, and even until what amendment, the senators were elected by the state legislature, right? As opposed to by the people. So, and that's, I believe, either a late 19th century, early 20th century change.
I know, not too long ago, actually. Well, I want to defer to my guests tonight, so I'm going to let John start out and talk about what does it mean to be a Republican? What does the Republican Party stand for?
Well, that's a great question. What is the Republican philosophy? Well, one of the challenges I think with both any political party, and certainly in the United States, is, there is no, I'll say, and again, I'm not, there is no king of the party, no pope that issues encyclicals about the party principles. The national chairman is elected, but I think you can see in both cases they're not particularly powerful people. The convention delegates oftentimes do in fact adopt a platform, but that is heavily influenced by the candidate of that year, and obviously they get into a lot of details that may be kind of the point where it's hard to figure out what the principle was. Again, I think that's true in both parties. So I don't know that there is a Republican principle that we could show you on a card and say this is it. The parties are heavily influenced by their history and they evolve. I heard one time that there was a French political party that developed in the 19th century and has never changed its philosophy. And when it started, it was a left-wing or a very liberal party, and now it's a very conservative party because they just stayed the same and everybody else moved. So, and interestingly too, just as a little side light for history, the whole term leftist and a rightist all comes from the French Revolution, when the more liberal revolutionaries sat on the left side of the Council of, not sure what it was called now, and the conservative, the ones that supported the monarchy, sat on the right side. So that term came from actually about 1794. Anyway, the current Republican Party is the offspring of the Whig Party, really. That's the party of William Henry Harrison. They were seen as proponents of a modern economy. They emphasized an economy that did a lot to get manufacturing going. Of course, that made sense in that time of the development of the country. It was really the party of entrepreneurs and owners of large farms. Sounds a little bit like the Republicans today. But the issue of slavery divided them, and many Whigs became Republicans, as did Abraham Lincoln. Later Republicans like Warren Harding and William McKinley did much to modernize the whole presidency and the party. And of course, we did have, and we've always had a range of elected officials and Republicans, from liberals to conservative. And it's interesting that the Democrats claim Thomas Jefferson as one of their own.
That we do.
But really, Thomas Jefferson had an aversion to a large central government, was very much in favor of stronger state rights or state powers. And I think maybe some of that emphasis or influence of the Republican Party may have come, in fact, when a lot of Southern Democrats became Republicans in the 70s and 80s and brought a little bit more of that states' rights view. Anyway, what I'm going to say is there's about 60 to 95 million Republican philosophies. And that's if you consider voting age and registered voters that either identify themselves as Republican or lean Republican. It's about 40% of that population. And so there are probably 90 million Republican philosophies. But at the heart, I would say that there are four of them, really. One is limited government, especially at the federal level, like Jefferson, limited regulations and laws, and limited taxes and limited wealth distribution. Strong individual responsibility and individual rights, again in contrast to a large, all-powerful central government. A market economy or a free enterprise system to provide the basis for economic growth, not the government. The government can't create wealth, it can only enable it. And then a commitment to defending our system, our citizens, and our interests at our borders and as well as beyond. So I think if you said those four principles, I think most of those 60 to 90 million people could agree on that. It's the details, they might have a little difference.
Sure. And there are regional details that happen as we look across the United States in terms of interpretation of those principles. So I want to thank you again for joining us. We're going to be right back, so stay tuned when we come back for Across the Aisle, and we're going to talk some more about political parties. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm TV2 Sports Talk's Bill Morgan. Some people are outstanding at playing sports, and then there's me. While we at TV2 Sports Talk may have never been All-State on the field, we are Tuscarawas County's MVP when it comes to local television sports talk and play-by-play. Catch TV2 Sports Talk Wednesday nights at 7 and Friday afternoons at 5 on DMG Channel 2.
Myers & Miller Podiatry provides complete foot and ankle care to patients of all ages. The practice was established in 2000 by Dr. Adam Myers and has grown to include Dr. Andy Miller in 2007, Dr. Jason Bakich in 2010, and most recently Dr. Kristen Henry in 2015. Our core values of respect and honesty are the basis for how we manage our practice, and we continue to grow by building relationships with our patients in order to better serve their needs. Myers & Miller Podiatry serves Tuscarawas and Holmes counties with offices in Dover, Sugar Creek, Newcomerstown, Millersburg, and our newest location in Yorksville. Let's get started with building our relationship.
Welcome back to Across the Aisle. I'm Gail Garbrandt, and with me is John Elsesser. We're having a fun and hopefully meaningful discussion about political parties. So to move on, now we're going to talk about the Democratic Party for a little bit. I know that's one of your favorite subjects. The Democratic Party is the oldest continuing party in the United States. It is also the oldest political party in the world. Today there, of course, are millions of supporters who are fighting for progress and helping Democrats across the country win elections from the White House to the State House to the courthouse.
Not many state houses, but.
So what are the things that we believe in? Well, we believe that the best government is one that is efficient yet understanding, a government that is based on not systems or bureaucracies, but people, ideas, and values. We believe there is no substitute for fair and equal representation and strong public participation in a government chosen by a free and fair election. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the show, is because of the participation part. We also have about 3 core principles that tie our party together. Democrats believe that we're greater together than we are on our own, that this country succeeds when everyone gets a fair shot, everyone does their fair share, and everyone plays by the same rules. Our party currently is led by President Obama, and it is focused on building an economy that lifts up all Americans, not just those at the top. And that's why Democrats are working to make progress on issues like job creation, equal pay, education, health care, and clean energy. For over 200 years, our party has led the fight for civil rights, health care, Social Security, workers' rights, and women's rights. We are the party of Barack Obama, John F. Kennedy, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and the countless everyday Americans who work each day to build a more perfect union. In general, when you look at our party, we are a party that tends to favor big government. We think that government has a responsibility to its citizens. We do believe that people sometimes fall upon hard times, and there should be a social safety net to help them until they can get back on their feet and become more productive members of society. Most Americans share 3 values, and sometimes this is a way to discuss the differences between the parties. And those 3 values are freedom, which both parties, I would say, John, right,
Sure.
truly believe in, equality, and order. And that's where you're going to see a little bit of difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. The Republicans tend to favor order. So you'll see them favor more defense spending and those kinds of policies that put in place systems and institutions, even though they aren't as wide, have as wide a reach as perhaps some of the Democratic organizations. Whereas Democrats really favor equality and will try to always be at the front of those movements like civil rights, women's rights, equal pay, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I will say also that a lot of times it's really a lot of the women who are in the trenches doing kind of the grunt work. And I have worked at the state government level and at the county government level. And oftentimes at a meeting, you'll appreciate this, people will say, that's really a great idea. Now let's get a bunch of women together to get the work done so we can make it happen. So, so John, what are your thoughts about that freedom, order, and equality?
Well, I think that's true. I think the emphasis is probably different. You know, freedom, I think, again, you know, I think the Republicans would say it's the freedom to try, the freedom, you know, to have an opportunity, but no guarantee of that, of course. I think, you know, it's the freedom to run a business without excessive regulation, the freedom to run your life without excessive regulation, which I think, again, you know, both parties go too far many times. I think on average, you know, I look at it as like a bell curve, if you would, you know, shaped like this. And I believe that, you know, the parties have a lot of overlap on that bell curve. The center of each one is different, you know, and probably on each of those issues. And, you know, it just seems to me that you know, that we have a different definition of freedom, perhaps a little bit. We all agree in the broad concept of freedom. Again,
Right.
It's what does that mean for our day-to-day lives, either as an individual or a business. You know, equality, I think, is the same thing. I mean, again, I don't think you'd find any Republicans that would argue that we shouldn't have equality of the sexes, of races, of religions. You know, those aren't relevant things. The question is, how do you provide? Can you provide equality, or do you provide equality before the law, as opposed to an equality of outcomes? It's an equality of opportunities.
Right.
And I think, again, the government can't create wealth. They can't really redistribute very effectively. And that's where I think we differ.
Mm-hmm. I think another place that you can really look, and this is at the national level, when you want to look at the differences between political parties, every 4 years when there's a presidential election, the parties adopt a platform. And that platform is almost always published in major newspapers. You'll find it online. And it's going to have some issues of importance like defense, education. What are some of the other ones?
You said education, defense. I was just looking
the economy.
At, yes, regulation.
Yeah, and it'll say what the party believes in. Now,
foreign policy, maybe.
Right.
Yep.
And we get, and domestic policy too. We get excited when we see these platforms. We're like, oh my gosh, that's so much what I believe in, and that's who I'm going to vote for. But sometimes what we forget is that once that person is elected, they don't always stick by the platform that the party adopted, and there's no way to really enforce that other than if you don't think that the person that you have elected is voicing your view, then it's up to you to vote that person out of office, and that's kind of the way our system works.
Sure. Well, you know, and the other thing too, I think in those platforms, you know, it seems to me that the danger that we are running into as a country today in our political process is a little bit broken, where we really don't get a whole lot of compromise. Mm-hmm. You know, I look back and think about, you know, again, I don't know if it's true or not, but I've always heard, you know, that Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill would get together and talk about some of these issues. And I don't think that's happened too much in the last two administrations.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And so, you know, and I think that's one of the issues that, you know, you can have a great platform, but if you can't get it implemented, it doesn't really matter.
Right. It's just a piece of paper. Yeah, and I think that that's really true. You brought up a really good point, is that I think sometimes we suffer from a loss of civility in our debates, whereas it used to be that gentlemen were gentlemen and they could disagree on the floor of the House or Senate, but at the end of the day, they could sit down and talk about those differences and find a compromise. So stay tuned. We're going to be back and we're going to talk some more at Across the Aisle. And today's topic is political parties. Thank you.
WJER and TV2 would like to introduce you to a new website, WJERTV2.com, where you can watch exciting high school football, soccer, and volleyball replays from TV2 Sports on your home computer, smartphone, or tablet. Also watch the latest episodes of TV2's original programming, Sports Talk, The Garden Girl, The Not So Shy Chef, Off the Record, and Medical Minutes, as well as catch up on local community news and search for local businesses. So make sure to check out the new WJERTV2.com community website where everything's local.
Welcome back to Across the Aisle. Today we're talking about political parties. I'm Gail Garbrandt, and with me is my guest, John Elsasser. And we've been talking about parties basically at the national level and I guess globally. And so now we want to shift to the local level, which I know that a lot of you will relate to. Both parties in our county have official headquarters. The Republican headquarters is on Worcester Avenue in Dover, and the Democratic Party headquarters is over in Monroe Mall, Phase 2. So hopefully at the end of the show, you're going to be so intrigued with these two parties, now that you've gotten to know them a little better, that you might want to go over and volunteer.
Right.
And both parties always are looking for
Oh, yeah,
people
yeah.
to help out at the offices, answering phones, doing mailings.
Stuffing envelopes,
yeah.
addressing envelopes, calling phone banks. You know, and interestingly, I don't know about the Democrat Party, but I know in the case of the Republican Party, there aren't really that many counties that have permanent headquarters. Tuscarawas County is relatively unique in that the Republican Party has a permanent headquarters. Stark County does, Tuscarawas, I believe Columbiana might, but I don't think Holmes does, even though it's a very Republican party, county. I don't think Carroll does. And so we're actually, somewhat, I say lucky from a political process to have
Sure.
parties that believe in having kind of that bricks and mortar.
Yeah, I agree. Well, shifting to the local level, we have two races that are going to be on the ballot in November. And these are both partisan races, and they're both mayoral races. The race for the mayor of Dover involves a longtime incumbent, Mayor Rick Homrichhausen, and he is being challenged by Robert Everett, who is a former policeman for the city of Dover, moved away with his family, came back to the area, and decided to get into the race. So, John, can you give us a little insight on that in terms of Democrats, Republicans, the mayor's race in Dover?
Well, I don't live in Dover or New Philly,
Neither do I.
But what I would say again is that really, I don't think that the political party has great significance at the local level. It does certainly at the federal. It does probably at the state, and certainly at the state, I think, in administrative positions for sure. But I still, I believe the political parties are important parts of that process. I think that, again, this is my own sort of stereotypical bias. I believe that Republicans tend to be better managers than Democrat administrations.
Well
and
then.
so I think, there's
Tell
a
us
good...
how you really feel.
So to the degree that the purpose of local government is to provide an infrastructure, order, if you will, good streets, good, environment, good infrastructure, and
Right.
environment for business to be successful, then again, that would seem to play right into the strengths of the Republican Party, of course.
And,
But you might say,
and now Mayor Homrichhausen has been the mayor for how long has he been?
well, I don't know, quite a while.
yeah,
Yes.
and he's a long time incumbent.
Yeah.
Okay, so then shifting over to New Philadelphia, we also have a kind of a hot race there, and we have the current mayor, Dave Johnson, who was appointed to that position when the former mayor, Mike Taylor, resigned midterm, and he was appointed by the Democratic Central Committee to take that position, and he is running for election to continue his work as mayor, and he is being challenged actually by one of his employees, which is kind of interesting. He's being challenged by Republican Joel Day, who is the director of the City of New Philadelphia Income Tax Department. And a big issue in that race has been this building of the fire station. And so both candidates have different views on that. But what do you, and I don't live in New Philadelphia either, although I was a 1974 graduate from Dover High School. Anything you hear under the radar about the New Philly mayor's race, John?
It ought to be an interesting one. Joel also was, of course, president of council for quite a few years, and so I think both races are going to be good ones. And I really can't say too much because I'm not a resident there and don't have a whole lot of insight. But I will say that I look at Dover and think that Dover seems to be run pretty well, and I don't know much about New Philadelphia.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing your view with us. I know that it's easy for people to point the finger and say, this guy's kind of a lousy mayor, or this guy would be a bad candidate. But I will say that I do respect everyone on both sides of those races for having the guts to stand up and put their name out there and to articulate their views on what they think is the best direction for either city.
And they're all trying. They all think they have a good answer for some of the issues that everybody faces.
Okay. Well, listen, I want you to make sure that you stay tuned in with us for Across the Aisle. Again, we are on the air Tuesdays at 7 o'clock p.m. and again on Fridays at 4:30 p.m. If that doesn't work with your schedule, don't fret. You can find us on YouTube just search under Across the Aisle, or you can go to WJER-TV2, and you have to put the number 2.com, and you can also watch the show. And we will be having some interviews coming up in future shows with the mayor's candidates for the Dover race as well as the mayors for the New Philadelphia race. And we're also going to have some people come in and talk about that all-important issue number 3, which is getting a lot of ink in the newspapers, and actually somebody's paying for a lot of TV commercials. So thank you again for joining us. I want to give a special thank you to my friend John Elsasser.
Thanks, Gail. Thank you.
And we can only hope that government continues to be run as well as we both wish it to be.
Right.
All right. Thanks, and have a great evening.
Thank you.